terra autem haxita est in monte, et circa montem quidicita Brente, habens ab occidente Sabrinam. Ab Aquilone Arxam. Ab Oriente Teramic. Ab Austro Siger.
Mabel, how come she got such a long tail? Isn't that unusual for a sheep?
I don't know, yeah. Perhaps she's been crossed with a dog.
Oh, look at the train.
I'm up at Brent Knoll, and the K is silent in Knoll. It wasn't in Anglo-Saxon times, it was a C in Anglo-Saxon times, but that K sound, it has disappeared from our language. But it's there for a reason. It's to make sure that we understand that canal is not something else. It describes what it is, which is why it has those extra letters. It's a good advantage spot for me to see where I was last week, which is a projecting hillside, a projecting ridge above the levels that carries on towards the Bristol Channel, where there's another projecting hillside known as Bleadon today, and both of them have an older name. We've got Howe Rocks at the end of Bleadon, and that comes from Hoch, which is a projecting hill that looks like a heel. And the same with Bleadon Hill. On the other side there's a village called Hutton, and that means Hochtun, which is the estate of the hill, the hill that looks like a heel. So it has pretty, so it's had two names, Bleadon, which is a coloured hill, and on the other side the Hoch. But these words, Bleadon has come down to us, but Hutton is fairly hidden. Now, it's all in the vowels. If it was Hatton, I'd know there's a damn good chance that it meant high estate. But because it's a U and not an A, we have to look it up and see what the older forms of the other names are. And that is the only way we can be sure we're not making it up. And even if the ancients were deluded, we have to listen to their voice, because they're long gone, and that's all we have is what they've written down. And so when one of my viewers asked me, to call Walborough what it is, which is the Welsh barrow, which it isn't. I don't think it is. But he said I should be explicit and say what it really is, implying that I'd got it wrong. I may have it wrong. This is the problem. So Walborough is almost definitely from the 1840s. The tithe maps. It reflects that tone. It may be older than that. So because it's new, we can never really be sure what it is. The evidence I gave for my interpretation was that there is a landmark called Walway, and that Wal, which is like a quarter of a mile from Walborough, should be a good indicator that we are seeing Wal also in Walborough, because Wal, amongst many vowel sounds, ends up as wall in the modern day. So because I have some evidence from the 10th century to suggest what Walborough is, I'm sticking with it. But I do have a bit of a problem. Another subscriber asked, well, why isn't it whale, as in humpbacked whale? Why isn't it that, the W-H-A-L-E way? And it's because of the missing H. If it was proper, correct West Saxon English, it would be Hwalway, not Walway. But unfortunately for me, it can be, which is really annoying. So immediately when I looked at Bosworth Toller, and that's the dictionary of Old English, and I went, oh God. Immediately when I'd done that, I had to check as much as I could, and I said, hold on, the boundary doesn't go to the sea, but then of course the road could, but we are right next to it. It's just over there, so it could be. And Walway is a poetic allusion to the sea. The Wales Road. The sea is the Wales Road. Wales use it as their road. So that, in my defence, that therefore should be Walway Way. But I've never seen a poetic allusion in a Saxon charter. They're very plain, matter-of-fact, Peter and Jane language, because they're legal documents. This is my land. If you were writing the deeds to your land, you wouldn't allow any poetic nonsense to enter into it, just in case it could be misinterpreted later on. So I still think I'm right. It's and also in my defence that Grundy also says it's the slaughter way, exactly the same, slaughtered people. So I still think it is the Walway, which is, but we've got this element of uncertainty. And somebody else said in the comments, you're very confident now, and that's a good thing. But I don't think it is. I should make it much clearer that I am dealing with 10 centuries of ambiguity. I can only do my best. But it keeps giving these charters. So I was looking at the neighbourhood around here, and here we have another charter, the Charter of Brent, and it's really old. It's the 600s. So we really are looking at the point where the English beat the British in the West Country, and so we really are looking in the past now. This isn't. They say the Anglo-Saxon period was early medieval. We're looking at late antiquity. We're looking at the movement of barbarians. It's something else entirely. And and we definitely know it's not just by the date of it, but the fact it's written in Latin with English place names for landmarks. It only has 4 locations in its landmarks. Again, another indicator of age, and it seems to use rivers only, as that's quite an arbitrary way of setting out an estate. I've been talking in previous videos about how English parishes have a little bit of good land, a little bit of bad land, a little bit of woodland, a little bit of upland, you know. Everybody gets their fair share. But here, it's between one river over there, one river over there, one river over there, and one river over there. And regardless of what makes up this land. And we're seeing arbitrariness that is interesting. We're also seeing, and Margaret Gelling, if she was alive, would be interested in this, at the centre of it is an Iron Age hill fort. So we might be looking at a British estate, a Celtic, Welsh, West Welsh estate. Margaret Gelling makes the case that we can, from the Saxon charters, patch them together to create estates with Iron Age hill forts in the middle. And I think she's right, but in theory, as an overall broad brush, the details is very, very difficult. Also, what's interesting is that this is probably this hill fort was probably reused after the Romans left, the Roman army. So what happened when the Romans got here? They, like any occupied force, would decommission any foci of resistance against them. So these hill forts would have been religious, royal, military, social, economic. I'm not necessarily saying they were used all year round, but they would, you know, they were really important. Certainly every market day and festival and so on. This whole land would have been massively flooded. It was underwater most of the time. The one big swamp. So it's a grand place to defend. You've got really good slopes all around you. Now the Romans decommissioned them. There's some evidence that that religious worship carried on in them, but you can bet your bottom dollar the walls came down. The wooden palisades were knocked down. You can bet your bottom dollar there was a sentry or two up here as well. These would have been this would have been a focus for resistance if there had been any. Once the Roman army left, some hill forts were reoccupied, especially in the southwest, just over the Severn in Wales. There was some hill forts refortified, and over here. This place hasn't been dug, but the D-shaped earthworks, they say, by the main entrance are typical of 5th century defences, but they might not be. They have to dig to be certain. So it is a remarkable spot. Coming down the M5 past Weston-super-Mare, you will see it and go, I bet that's an Iron Age fort, and it is. And on its side you can see lynches from ancient and medieval ploughing. There's also a holloway goes down that way, and a path goes down that way, and it is a really striking place. It's named Brent. Also suggests that it held on for a long time. Eccles says because of the Brente form of it. Well, he says it Brent on its own as a word could come from Brant, Old English for steep, and it bloody was steep, I can tell you. But it can also mean British, the same word that gives us the Briganti, the northern tribe, and that ger becomes yer, and then is finally replaced with a u, so it becomes a Brigante, Briante, Briant, and Brunte, and that in the 1100s this place was called Brunte. So it's very likely, likely that this place was managed to hold its dignity as a Welsh place. I can say that with a certain amount of authority thanks to Ekwall. This place held out quite a long time, but certainly by the 600s it is English. Now the English wouldn't have necessarily minded it. Well, they would, because they normally, you know, if the commander was called Elfsig, this place would be Elfsigerhülle. You know, so it does suggest they held out long enough to negotiate some sort of remnant of their place names, their culture, their mores, something or other. Something of them survived to allow them to keep their name. Because as I've said a million times on this channel, in Berkshire, the chieftain just comes along and says, this place is named after me now, and you now all speak English. And he bloody meant it. And the fact that they held out into the 600s, and the fact that we also know the English were becoming more integrated. All right, they were definitely like the Ubermensch, but we can see from the archaeology that they were, and from genetics and minerals in teeth and so on, they are integrating in some sense, even if they are the new bosses. They're British Germans now, you know, and we can see that perhaps the longer resistance took, the more it was, and the more British the English became. They were calling themselves Bretwalda, for example. The high king of all the, you know, the main king of all the kings was the Bretwalda, the ruler of Britain. So they're becoming more British. So it was more possible for a conquered people to retain something of their previous culture, and I think you might be seeing that here. Though there's not a massive amount in Somerset, I have to say. I haven't looked at it too clearly. I ought to map the whole of Somerset and see what we can see. But it was pleasing to see that it does seem to be an estate with an Iron Age hill fort right in the middle. We see lots of English estates where the boundary goes straight through the middle of an Iron Age hill fort, which shows how an older estate was divided according to Margaret Gelling. Here we're seeing something very, very interesting. Now, 3 of the rivers are known. That one over there is the interesting one. That one over there is the Sabrina. So we know that as the Bristol Channel today, and as it narrows to become a normal river up there, we call it the Severn, the Sabrina. The Havern to the Welsh today, but it is their word originally. They would originally have called it the Sabrina, or something similar to that. I'm sure there might have been mutations, whatever. But what's interesting is that all of that water over there was the Sabrina, the Severn. As I said, we don't call that today, but it was to them. And knowing that, also because we know there is religious and cultural functions to the namings of a river, then that's the western boundary of this estate. To the north is the Axarn, or Axarm, and that's the River Axe today, and that goes along the bottom of our hoch, of our ridge, and then goes along to Axbridge, and then further on. Its eastern boundary comes south, and that was a bit of a problem for a while until somebody spotted it is Teramic in Old English, until somebody saw the village Tarnock and put 2 and 2 together. So it's the ick and uck sounds we see on the ends of rivers. We're pretty sure it's the name of one of the watercourses that goes near Tarnock. Is the River Tarnock. But all the water, because this land has been drained and then loads and loads of ditches put in, the integrity of the rivers have been reduced. One in fact completely disappeared, which is the southern one, and some academics have rediscovered it thanks to aerial photographs, not aerial photographs, thanks to Lidar and a photograph from the 60s when it flooded, and it is the river Siger. Because of all the drainage, the river has disappeared, but when it was flooded in the 60s, a photograph was taken quite clearly showing the course of a river, and they can also see it on the Lidar. So we can see an ancient river. It's a paleo river, as archaeologists call it. It's just gone. And it's just down there, and north of High Ridge, whatever that place is called over there. And then obviously joins up with the Tarnock, and there we were. But what's his face? Grundy thinks that the ditch next to Tarnock is the Teramic. He ignores the there is a Rhine, a drainage ditch, a river, a straight river essentially, called Mark Rhine. That word mark should be cause for consideration for you, because we have our Old English merk, and I start off nearly every video with Yamara at some point, and it's the same word, slightly different. And there's a village called Mark which it goes to, and that is Old English merk. It is the border village. So we've got some interesting stuff. My imagination's running wild here about, you know, a tiny enclave of, you know, with the British version of Asterix and Obelix, holding out with their magic potions against the nasty Germans, and it could very well be. It is such a nicely deliberate estate shape that is rational, that keeps to rivers, and it feels very, very deep and old.